Hey guys, it's PJ with Commander Replay, and holy crap am I excited to share this Aether Revolt spoiler with you. I can't say this guy's name to save my life, but we'll give it a shot. I think it's Sram Senior Edificer? Someone can let me know if they know how to pronounce that in the comments below, because I'm about to say it wrong like 100 times in this video. Anyway, what does Sram do? He's a 2-mana 2/2 that says, whenever you cast an aura, equipment, or vehicle spell, draw a card. This is like the missing link for White. White has such bad card advantage in Commander that I see this guy changing everything. Equipment lovers rejoice. I'm going to open up to you guys right now. I am an equipment lover. I love equipment decks. My favorite deck is an Aurelia equipment deck, and this guy is going to give me more of what I love doing. Anyway, let's break it down to see why Sram is going to be awesome in Commander. First up, he's 2 mana. I play an Ashling deck, and any of you that play 1 or 2 mana commanders like Isamaru or Gaddock Teeg understand how strong it is to be able to play your commander on turn 2. It allows you to curve, making bigger synergistic plays without having to stop to cast your commander on turn 4 or 5. Case in point, the thing that I am most excited to do is play Sram on turn 2, then cast any of the 5 swords on turn 3, equip, and swing on turn 4, and get to the beatdowns. So his low mana cost and the ability to play on curve will make him very, very strong. Next, he's legendary, meaning that he can be your commander, which is pretty obvious. But also, if you're looking to play him as part of your 99 in an existing commander, he can be tutored with cards that care about legendary, such as Time of Need, Captain Sisay, or Thalia's Lancers. He can also be tutored by things that tutor for creatures such as Worldly Tutor and Court of Calling. And finally, Imperial Recruiter or Imperial of the Guard can also find Sram. Next, let's talk about his draw ability in mono white. The draw ability is on cast, so the spell doesn't need to resolve in order for you to get the draw. This is relevant if you're facing a pesky mono blue deck. As a side note, if you're facing a mono blue deck in a 1v1 and you're on the play, you can most likely get Sram down into play before the counter spells really start. There are some 1-mana counter spells, but they're not played as heavily as the 2-mana ones. But more importantly, we're talking about card draw in mono white. And we're talking about card draw off cards that you want to be playing. Previous iterations of mono white card draw, such as Mentor of the Meek and Bygone Bishop, require you to play exclusively low casting cost or low power creatures. So you kind of have to warp your deck around these creatures to get the benefit of the card draw. Even more troubling is that those cards are not legendary, so you don't always have access to them, and when you've warped your deck to something that you don't always have access to, it's not a great feeling. However, it would be kind of cool to see a legendary version of Mentor of the Meek or Bygone Bishop, just to see what it's like to have access to that effect all of the time. But where I think Shram's biggest strength is going to be, it's going to be his flexibility in deck building. Typically, decks that care about equipment don't care about auras or vehicles, and vice versa. The fact that Sram lets you mix and match any of these 3 card subtypes will be awesome. It gives you this amazing amount of flexibility that you can play any or all of those type of cards. For example, if you want to play an Enchantress style deck with auras, have at it. If you want to go on the equipment beatdown plan, which I do, you can. You want to make that vehicle deck work in Commander? Now you can. The biggest deal here is that you're not pigeonholed into any single one of these strategies, and you can mix them as you want to. Let's talk about some cards that I think synergize well with Sram, beyond the obvious choices, which are every aura, every equipment, and every vehicle ever printed. For this section, I focused on white and colorless cards, but there will be many other cards that interact favorably with Sram as part of your 99 if you're playing a multicolor deck. So first up, equipments. Take your pick from any of the 5 swords. Next, any equipment with living weapon I think will be very strong. Batterskull's the poster child of living weapon equipments, but I can see making a case for the other living weapon equipments as well. Also, in a late game scenario, you can pick up your Batterskull and then recast it to get an additional card draw. It could be relevant. Umezawa's Jitte, the most powerful equipment ever. Of note, if you hit a Sol Ring or a Mana Crypt, you can equip Jit and attack all on turn 3. Which brings me to my next point. I think a lot of the cheaper equipment cards like Bonesaw and Trusty Machete will be very strong with Sram because you'll be able to cast and equip all on the same turn while keeping your hand full of action. Next up are auras. The big auras that jump off the page as powerhouses are Angelic Destiny, Armored Ascension, and Eldrazi Conscription. Although with Angelic Destiny, you would need to send Sram to the graveyard in order to get that recycle to your hand trigger, which isn't really recommended. You better have a way to pull them out if you're going to do that. But otherwise, things like Ethereal Armor, Daybreak Coronet, any of the auras that say draw a card, any auras that grant protection from colors or creatures, and any auras that grant evasion, combat abilities, indestructible, or just make Shram really big, I think will all be super effective. However, the slightly less obvious choice might be to play cards like Pacifism and Faith Fetters so you can lock your opponent out of the game. Shram's ability does not require that the auras target him, you only need to cast them. Next are vehicles. While you could probably build a full vehicle deck with the release of Aether Revolt, I would focus on the best vehicles, such as Smuggler's Copter, Heart of Kiran, the Skyship, and a small handful of others. If you're going deep on the vehicle strategy, I would still run some number of equipments and auras to allow Shram to crew your vehicles. Some other cards that synergize well with Shram will be the obvious one, Enlightened Tutor. This is a must in any Shram deck. Enlightened Tutor will find any of the card types that draws you a card off of Shram. Essentially, it'll replace itself as the card that you spent. Pretty awesome. Mana-wise, I think Lotus Petal could be really good because you have the ability to offset the card loss by using Shram's draw ability. Not necessarily on the petal itself, but on the things you play after it. Mox Opal will probably work well for the same reason here, assuming you're on the equipment or vehicle plan. Next up, if you have deep enough pockets and you're on the Aura plan, Serra Sanctum can give you a ton of mana. Other cards that synergize well, Mesa Enchantress if you're on the Aura Enchantress plan, and any other Enchantment Matters cards. And of course, can't forget 3 Dreams, which will also be an all-star. It is Card Advantage City! Can't forget any of the Equipment Matters cards, or cards that care about artifacts, such as Stoneforge Mystic, Relic Seeker, Pure Steel Paladin, Steel Shaper's Gift, Open the Armory, Nahiri the Lithomancer, and Sigarda's Aid will all be awesome. Of note, Stoneforge Mystic and Stonehewer Giant are a little bit awkward with Shram. Both of these cards have abilities where the equipment is put directly into play, but is not cast. So you would not get the draw trigger off of Shram by using the activated abilities of Stoneforge or Stonehewer. Though, if I'm running an equipment list, I'll probably still play both of those cards anyway, just because they're strong on their own. If you're on the equipment plan, Ugin the Spirit Dragon and All Is Dust are awesome sweepers. They blow up all of the colored permanents, which leaves all of your equipments behind, so you just have to recast your commander, equip him, and then get back to the beatdowns. If you're on the Aura plan, you may not want to run Ugin or All Is Dust. Next up, because of his low mana cost, I think that mana denial strategies will be very good with Shram. Probably more so for 1v1 applications, particularly competitive ones, but I think it'll still be viable in multiplayer. Because Shram is 2 mana, by turn 4 or 5 you can have him equipped or enchanted up. Cards like Cataclysm, Armageddon, Ravages of War, or Winter Orb can all lock your opponents completely out of the game, effectively not letting them play Magic. Of course, this is only for competitive applications. I don't recommend bringing a strategy like this to your local friendly playgroup, unless your friends are dicks and play combo decks. Then have at it! So let's talk about some deck ideas with Shram as your commander. For 1v1 competitive, I assume that the best builds will be a hybrid of everything I mentioned above. Some auras, some equipments, possibly some vehicles, some mana denial, some good white creatures, and a healthy mix of removal. Basically, the idea is get a threat on the board, protect it, disrupt your opponent, and then beat them down while they can't do anything. For multiplayer, you can season any mashup of Aura Enchantress, Voltron equipment, vehicles, and white good stuff to your own personal taste buds. However, there are some more extreme deck building ideas that I want to try out. I plan to try out a Shram list where the only creatures are Shram and living weapon germs. Why? I think it'll be fun. I think he's strong enough on his own that he says, I don't need other creatures in this deck to be able to beat my opponent upside the head. I assume that this type of deck will have a lot in common with an Isamaru Hound of Konda list or a Kemba list, but I also want to try out the All Vehicles deck list, the All Equipments deck list, and the All Auras deck list. And again, I think that flexibility that Shram gives is what makes him so exciting. So what already existing commander decks does Shram slot into? First up, Ural the Miststalker. More card draw for Ural, more ways to lose to Ural. Next, Bruna Light of Alabaster. Same as Ural. More card draw for Bruna, more massive beatdowns. Next, Rafik of the Many. Kneel before Rafik as he bashes you in the skull with a handful of counter backup. Any Boros equipment general, such as Aurelia, my personal favorite, Gisela, Kalemni, or Iroas. Note that auras and equipments don't particularly play well with Iroas, but I've still seen them from time to time. Daxos the Returned. There are some auras in the currently popular Daxos lists. I could see Daxos changing to be more aura-centric with Sram. Next, Karamitra Enchantress. Doesn't run auras, but again, I could see this type of deck warping itself to play more auras to play well with Sram. Especially in green-white, you have a lot of ways to easily tutor for him. You'd also slot right into the Depala deck if you're on the full vehicle plan, and he also fits in any deck that's playing Pure Steel Paladin. He's basically half of a Pure Steel Paladin with some flexibility, but without the free equip cost. Alright guys, that's gonna wrap it up for today. I'm super excited to start brewing with Sram Senior Edificer. Let me know how you guys plan to build Sram, or what existing decks you plan to slot him into. I hope you enjoyed the video. See you next time.